Hello, thank you for joining me. You can see where I am. I'm at Oxford, although this sign is a little bit old because First Great Western, that name isn't seen on trains anymore, and Chiltern took over the line to Bicester 10 years ago when they extended it through to the Chiltern Main Line. Anyway, that isn't actually what this video is about. The reason I'm here at Oxford is because I'm on my way to the largest town in Oxfordshire without a railway station. So to qualify as the largest town in a county without a railway station, it has to not have any form of national rail station, metro or tram. So the two examples I would give which don't have a national rail station but wouldn't qualify: Cheshire in Buckinghamshire, it's got the Metropolitan line; Oldham in Greater Manchester, it's got the Manchester Metrolink trams. So hope you've got that. What we're going to do, we're going to take a train from here to the nearest railway station to the largest town without a railway station. So what I'm going to do, catch my train over there, we're going to go to Radley, and then from there it'll be probably a bus journey to the largest town in Oxfordshire without a railway station. Here we are, we have arrived at Radley. This is the nearest railway station to Abingdon-on-Thames. Abingdon-on-Thames is the largest town in Oxfordshire without a railway station. It has a population of 37,000, so it's quite large. In fact, it's the third largest settlement in Oxfordshire itself. Oxford, of course, is the largest, followed by Banbury and then Abingdon-on-Thames. As I say, this is the nearest railway station. There was, of course, a railway to Abingdon-on-Thames just down there. There was a junction and there was a branch line. We'll talk more about Abingdon's former station and stations. There's a couple of surprises there later on. The interesting thing with Abingdon is it wasn't always in Oxfordshire. It actually used to be in Berkshire. Now, had that still been the case today, we'd be going to Witney, because Witney then becomes the second largest town in Oxfordshire without a railway station. I think a lot of people talk about Witney being this large town doesn't have a railway station. It's true, and it isn't much smaller, but Abingdon is that bigger, hence why we've come here. So what I'm going to do, find my way out the station, going to catch a bus. I probably could have just got the bus in Oxford, but I like to go to the nearest railhead I can for these towns. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over the bridge. Before I leave the station, I'm going to hang around because there's something else I want to see here. That was great to see, wasn't it? Always makes my day to see a steam loco, and I generally try and combine these trips. If a steam train can be seen, then all the better. Anyway, what I've noticed is that here, this looks like the old bay platform for the Abingdon train. So it was a little branch line, ran off just down there. There was a brief station, or shortly lived station, called Abingdon Junction, just further down there, where trains would have left the main line between Oxford and Banbury and then continued down the short branch road. But the trains would have come in and out the platform here. You can see, looking along here, the edge of the old bay platform, and then all of this land here would have probably been the goods yard, as it often was. So passengers travelling to and from Abingdon would have most likely changed here. There may well have been one or two through trains, but generally passengers would have changed here. I'm going to now make my way out the station that way and catch a bus, as it's no longer a train for Abingdon. Here we are, I've arrived in Abingdon. I've only ever driven through this town about once in the past, and from what I can see and what I remember, it is a very nice town, so I'm looking forward to explore it. But we will of course go and have a look where the railway station used to be and discuss, will the rails ever return to Abingdon? But for the time being, it's the buses if you don't want to drive it. This is the Abbey Gardens. Once in front of us there was the Abingdon Abbey. Now, when I do the largest town in the county without a railway station, I normally make a point of showing you around the town, having a look, seeing what else there is, what of interest there is in these towns. And this is exactly the sort of thing I like to see. But I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm not going to show you much else unless it's got something to do with its transport history. The reason why is this is a town that's interesting enough to deserve its own video. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a video. We're going to look around the Abbey, we're going to look around the town, have a look at the River Thames, see everything else there is, but not its transport history. So do look out for that video. Here's a little preview of what you'll see at the Abbey Gardens. Anyway, I think now somewhere over there is where the old railway station used to be. So let's go and find it. Quite often at some point in these videos I end up in a car park, and it's usually for the same reason. This is the site of where the railway line came into Abingdon. So that way is looking back towards the main line, and in front of me it's really not that exciting. Well, there's a Waitrose, so that's quite nice. I can go in there and get a coffee. But anyway, the point is, this is where the station was, and there's really not a lot to see of the old railway station, which is a bit of a shame. I think looking at these railings here, the platforms would have ended about here-ish, and then the station buildings would have been down there. When it first opened, it was broad gauge, as you know, it was actually opened by the Abingdon Railway, then it became part of the GWR, so it was a broad gauge railway, and then of course it was regauged to standard gauge. It closed in 1963, and then it closed to freight in 1984, I understand. I think behind me, where all the modern houses are, there would have been various factories. Interestingly, freight on the branch is quite an interesting subject. I've noticed here in the car park there's a Mini. Now, Minis were made locally at Oxford, but this isn't the first vintage car to be on this site, because MGs were made, some MGs were made here in Abingdon, and they actually were taken out of here by train. So there was once upon a time trains leaving this car park full of MGs, which I think is quite an exciting thing. Of course, there would have been other trains in the area with Minis on, and even today trains still do leave the Mini factory owned by BMW with cars on them. You just can't see them because they're in these special carriages, so it's just like a long blue carriage. Anyway, as we come along here, we're getting close to the front of the Waitrose, and like I say, it really isn't that exciting, but that is the site of the old railway station. I came here by bus, as you know. Now, the bus journey, it took me 11 minutes, and it really isn't that far. When I did my research, it didn't look like there was a feasible route to walk, but I've noticed they have put a pavement beside one of the roads. It's hidden by some trees. So what I thought I might do, for me this will be in a couple of hours time, I hate this decision, but for you watching it, it'll be in a few minutes. I might walk back to Radley, and we can use that walk to discuss the ideas, could rails ever return to Radley? We should do that on the walk. I'm going to go in Waitrose now and then have a look around the town. I'm currently in Abingdon Museum. Before I start heading back to Radley to make my way home, I thought it was worth having a look in here. They're always interesting to see, these town museums, and if there ever was a railway or is a railway, or you want to see any history on the town's railway, your past or present, you'll usually find it in these museums. And here we have a little something about the station. There's a picture. Interestingly, there's this bag here. Apparently what they used to do, the cash from Abingdon station, you know, cash, remember that, for on paper card, would have got put into this bag, sent on the last train of the day to Radley, and then eventually it made its way down to Paddington. The sort of train we may well have travelled on in steam days would have been one of these, a class 1400, which they have got some of these running at Didcot, and so you can ride on one fairly close to you, and that's with an auto train. So it went backwards and forwards. For those of you who don't know, the locomotive never had to uncouple, it simply went backwards and forwards all day, a bit like today's modern trains, except it was steam. So there's an example of the trains that used to run on the line. The other thing, of course, Abingdon is well known for is MGs. They were built here, and there's one here. Considering they're upstairs, it must have been interesting how they got it in. They must have taken the windows out and craned it in. So here we have an MG in Abingdon, and most of the MGs that were built here would have actually left Abingdon by train. There I am in Old Station Yard. I spent the last couple of hours exploring the rest of the town, so like I say, that'll be a separate video. This building here is called Old Station House. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk back to Radley. I don't know how long it's going to take me. It should take probably about an hour and 20 minutes or so. Not necessarily following the old railway, although parts of it are possible to follow. That's not what I'm going to do. I just want to see how long it takes me, and as the town grows, well, we'll discuss that as we go. So let's get into the outskirts of Abingdon. I'm going to have my last view of the town centre of this visit. I'm definitely going to come back here though, and I'm going to discuss my plans, what I think the future should be. Here I am in the corner of Abingdon closest to the railway station, Radley railway station. This corner here is about as near as you can live if you live in one of these houses to a railway station. In fact, I'd almost say you could walk there, but that's, I haven't actually got there yet. Look, it's a field on this side. You can see houses over there. So we're still in Abingdon at this point. I'm still in the largest town in Oxfordshire without a railway station. It's at this point where, well, firstly, I came this way on a bus. I didn't think I was going to walk back, not so much because of the distance, because if you look at the road ahead, it doesn't look like the kind of road you want to walk down. I was led to believe there was no pavement, but when I was on the bus, I spotted there is a path. Now I've just got to get across this road. That's half the battle done. I'm going to get across. Thank you, ladies, let me go. That's kind of... Anyway, right, so we're now in the very corner of Radley. Like I say, don't think it's out of the question to walk down that road, but there's this path here, so that is great. So that means I can walk to Radley station. In fact, look, the edge of Radley is just over there, and this is, I can see about one other person further ahead up the path, so I think it's going to be a nice place where I can discuss my ideas without having to worry about too much other people getting in the way or anything. So if you're still watching at this point, then thank you, because unfortunately with this series I do have quite a lot of negative comments, and I accept when you're going to make YouTube videos, not everyone's going to like what you have to say. But in some of these largest towns in the county without railway station, people seem to comment along the lines of, how dare you come and point out we haven't got a railway station. Someone said, I'm not interested in your video, don't bother making any more. Well, if you're that person, here I am. I'm making some more, because I have to say, despite some of the negative comments, I really enjoy going to the largest town in the county without railway station. I enjoy the train journey to get there. I enjoy looking around. In this case, it was so nice, I made a separate video exploring Abingdon, so that's how good this is. Some of them, well, when I did Surrey and West Sussex, they were pretty good, and funny enough, I didn't really get any negative comments. It was when I did, well, Kingswood, Woodley, and the worst of all, Hoddesdon. God, Hoddesdon. Yes, they didn't like me very much there. But anyway, I'm fairly sure from all the people I've seen today in Abingdon, you're all much nicer than that. And like I say, if you're still watching at this point, because the people who put those negative comments, they don't actually bother watching the video. They just comment, you know, and sometimes they don't even read the whole title. They put, no, this is the largest town in this county. It's like, yes, you're right, but I said without railway station. Anyway, enough of the negativities. It's now time for me to discuss. This is where you might think I'm a little bit radical, although I said a very similar thing for Hailsham in East Sussex, and quite a few people said they agreed with the idea. So the common question asked is Abingdon ever going to get a railway station again? And when I make these videos, it isn't necessary to say it should have a railway station, because in some cases Woodley and Kingswood never had railway stations. It'd be nice if it had a railway station, there's no two ways about it, but will it ever have one? It's a very interesting question. Could they reopen the branch? If money was no object, yes, you could knock buildings down, but you may want to put a station slightly on the edge of town. Buildings have been knocked down to reopen railways, so that's a common comment. Oh, something's built on the line. Yes, okay, but it can be knocked down. Buildings get knocked down for various other reasons. Anyway, I personally don't think it ever is going to get a railway station. In fact, I'd say Whitney, the second largest town in Oxfordshire without a railway station, if I ever get round to doing the second largest town in the county without a railway station, we'll go to Whitney and have a look. Whitney is a similar size, it is a bit smaller, hence the second largest town. I'd say there's actually more chance and more point reopening to Whitney. As for Abingdon, what should it do? Well, again, this is if cost was no object. What I would suggest is, to start with, give Oxford a tram system, a north to south tram system with a route going out towards sort of Headington area, where Headington Shark is, that kind of area, to the park and ride. So you'd have like a cross route system in Oxford. You start with that. You look at some European cities, they've done similar things. Then this is where it gets fun. You build an interurban route, or we extend the route into an interurban route down here to Abingdon. So you could use parts of the old railway, but the point is you could run possibly beside the main line and That way you've got a tram system, and then they can run quite fast when they're off the streets. I'm not saying put them on the streets of Abingdon's historic town centre, but you'd have them, admittedly I haven't worked out exactly where, but you'd find somewhere where the trams could terminate, whether they'd run through past the town centre and terminate out on the western side of Abingdon. So you effectively have a tram running through Abingdon. Abingdon itself isn't big enough to have a tram system, but it is big enough if you include running it through to Oxford. But then you do the same at the other end of Oxford. You run the tram further up to Kidlington. Now Kidlington's somewhere I really should go and make a YouTube video. It's one of the largest villages of England. It's huge, but it's a village and it hasn't got a railway station. So it must be the largest village in Oxfordshire without a railway station, because like I say, it's one of the largest villages of England. One slight tangent, I've just noticed they've put markers around the edge of this field. Are they going to build on this field? Because if they do, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but if they do, there's basically going to be no countryside between Abingdon and Radley. So that is my suggestion. But then the tram doesn't end at Kidlington. No, I'm not going to say it goes to Banbury. That would be a bit silly. It goes to Oxford Airport, which seems to sometimes call itself London's Oxford Airport, which, considering it's quite a long way from London, I think that's a bit stretching it. Anyway, the point is, imagine getting on a tram here. I mean, tram enthusiasts like me would love it, going all the way through Oxford up to Abingdon. Maybe have a tunnel through Oxford. I know, of course, you're looking at costs rising at that point, but I think you get the point. That is how I would solve the problem, by building a tram system in Oxford. A lady just cycled past me. I didn't get her on camera, but she probably had me saying, building a tram system in Oxford. We thought, what on earth is he on about? Anyway, I think I must now be on the edge of Radley. But at this point, I probably need to stop filming to work out where I'm going to go. I don't think it's down there, although three cyclists and a jogger have just gone that way. I think the road I was on the bus was along here, so I'm now in the village of Radley. So the other thing, now some of you might say, oh yeah, look, Radley Village, Radley Station, quarter of a mile. Abingdon, how far is it to Abingdon? It's 1 3/4 miles to Abingdon. So yeah, it's 2 1/4 miles walk, it seems I've done. It is a flat walk, I have to say. So some of you could say, well, it doesn't need a station because you've just walked it. Well, yes, I have, but I've done this on an early autumn afternoon with no luggage in the daylight. I wouldn't want to do this with luggage early in the morning when it's dark. I don't think, you know, young ladies would want to, want to do this walk alone. So it's not really, yes, okay, I've walked it, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily, that's not the problem solved. I mean, yes, then the buses do run, that's good. And also, if you're going to go by bus, I don't know how bad the traffic is going into Oxford, but you almost could say we might as well stay on the bus and go to Oxford anyway, because unless you're going to Didcot, you might as well, just stay, because if you're going to London, the Radley train doesn't stop it. I suppose you could change at Didcot, but anyway, I think you get the point. So we will finish the video at the railway station. So I'm just going to continue on now through Radley, and soon we should be there. Here we are, I'm back at Radley Station. This is the old bay platform, as I pointed out earlier, for Abingdon. And how long? I've got 5 minutes till my train arrives. I have to laugh, it's going to Evesham. Thinking, why is that funny? Well, sometimes people ask me which other channels I watch, and some of them have been discussed in the past, but the reason I'm laughing at this one is one channel I do particularly like, find it very funny. It's called Turd Towns, and he visits the top worst towns of each county, and he recently did Worcestershire, and Evesham came out as worse. Now I have to say I've never been to the town centre. I've only been there to the Evesham Vale Light Railway, which is very much worth visiting, but I'll have to go and see the rest of the town. But just funny that the town's going to Evesham. In fact, in his video, when he did Worcestershire, he also featured the largest town in Worcestershire without a railway station. So that's somewhere I should be going one day. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. There's a GWR IET passing through. Please do feel free to like, share, comment and subscribe. Please do subscribe, because that really helps me travel around the country, travel on trains like this. Yes, if you subscribe and share the video, it helps me travel around the countryside, which I really enjoy, and I can visit these places, because these videos are quite expensive to make. So like and subscribe, it really does help me a lot, and it means a lot. So if you could like, share, comment, subscribe, that would be great. Thank you very much for watching from Radley railway station, the nearest railway station to Abingdon, the largest town in Oxfordshire without railway station. Goodbye.